build video for the PVT90, little 2.5-inch center loop frame. I made this drone right here, this frame in particular, available at Buy Me a Coffee. Follow the link in the About section on my channel and just purchase the frame. For whatever reason, Buy Me a Coffee wouldn't allow me to drop all the files on one thing, so once I receive email confirmation that you purchased the frame, I'll send the STL files over for the canopy and the VTX flight controller mount. And we're going to get on with a little bit of flight footage of this little drone, and then we'll get on with the build. All right, so for this build, you're gonna need a 3D printer. You're gonna need the STL file. This is my design, I created it. Been wanting to do this for a long time. And for this one, I have the Diatone Mamba. These are the 1404 4000 kV motors. We have the Walksnail Avatar. This is the HD Mini 1S kit. We have a TBS Crossfire receiver. This is the GEP F722 35 amp AIO. For props, I'm going to be running the HQ prop. These are the 63 millimeter ×6 T-mount. I'm running never tried one of these before. I'm not been a big fan of beta FPV, but I'm gonna try this little small battery. This is a little 750 milliamp hour 4S 95C battery. I don't know how well it's gonna do, but I'm gonna give it a shot. For the plastics, for the 3D print, this one was done in PLA Plus. I've got 2mm heat set inserts. I've designed this frame for this. There's 3 STL files that come with this. This little 3D printed part, you'll see how it all comes together in the build, but it's just pretty much gonna set like this in here. Receiver goes right there, flight controller, VTX, and then you get your canopy. For the hardware, you're gonna need 4 times 10mm socket head cap screws, 2 times 8mm button head cap screws, 2 times 5mm button head cap screws, 4 times 20mm socket head cap screws, and 4 times 2mm nuts. And all I done right here was I just took some old soft mount from a flight controller and kind of just cut the little small thin part off the top so I could stack out the VTX on top of the flight controller. Like I said, for the plastics, this one was done in PLA Plus. This is TPU. It's kind of a Hulk theme going on here. I still have testing I'm wanting to do with different plastics. I have carbon fiber nylon. I'm gonna be doing testing with it. I'm also gonna 3D print some frames, a couple in ABS, and just see which ones are the best impact resistant. But I think this thing's gonna fly really well. But yeah, that's pretty much the rundown of the build. Let's get after it. Let's start building this thing out. Then we'll do some flying. All right, so first thing you want to do is go ahead and get your receiver prepped. You're gonna put the ground, the power, the the yellow, and the white. We'll go ahead and get this all soldered up right here, and probably go ahead and get it positioned in this, design this to where you can get your heat shrink in, and just double-sided sticky tape to this little flight controller VTX mount. And your receiver should look something like this right here. I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing soldered to the flight controller, and I've already looked at this flight controller in beta flight, and I'm pretty sure that it came from the factory with beta flight 4.3, and it's showing me putting the receiver on TX2 pad, which is, yeah, you got TX2 and R2 right here on the front. The orientation for the flight controller shows it with an arrow right there, like it's like this, but when I looked at it in beta flight, they already had the orientation swapped to where it goes like this. So this is the front, this is the back, left and right. But what I got to do to go ahead and start stacking this thing out the way I've designed it is I'll go ahead, get the receiver soldered onto the flight controller, and I'm going to look at it and see if I can go ahead and possibly plug this thing into the computer and get power to my receiver, and go ahead and get it bound to my radio before I heat shrink it and tuck it up underneath here. I'll still be able to easily access it later on if I need to, but I'm just going to go, that's a step I'm going to go ahead and take before I get any further. I'll show you how that looks here in just a second. Alright, so if you're following along with this build, this is how your receiver should look on this flight controller in particular. Got the ground right here, and I have the white wire, the RX soldered to the TX pad right here. I have the yellow wire, the TX soldered to the RX pad right there, and the power right here. And I was able to power this thing in beta flight off the flight controller without having a battery lead attached, and go ahead and get my receiver bound up to my radio. So now I have a flight controller and a receiver that's ready to go. So now I'm ready to stack this thing out how it's supposed to go. And all I'm going to do is just place some double-sided sticky tape on the back side of this receiver, and probably stick it just like this, and then mount the flight controller to this. Then I'll be able to stack out the VTX on top of the flight controller, and I'll show you how all that's going to go together here in just a second. Right, and here's the Walksnail Avatar Mini 1S. I couldn't plug it into the port that come on the flight controller because it's actually putting out I think like 7 volts plus, so I had to put it on a little 5-volt leg to power it right here. And I've got the ground, and I've got it on T1 and R1. The white goes to the transmit, the gray goes to the receive on the flight controller. And all these are on the R1 and the T1 pads. Now I'm going to stack this thing out and get it put in the drum. And this is just going to stack out just like that right there. So then I'll have access to the USB and pull my video off the receiver. Now all I got to do is get the power and the motor wires soldered up. The motor's put on this frame. Get it all buttoned up. Yeah, that just sits right down in there. Use these button head cap screws. And just bolt this thing down. Alright, so right there it is. It's pretty much pretty well put together. I left the motor wires extra long, so if I needed to go in here and take up anything and do any work, I can. It's pretty easy. The reason why I have the VTX detached, I'm going to take these 2 screws right here loose, because these bolts, the way they come up through my flight controller VTX mount, I need to put a wrench on them. I need to put a nut driver on it. Hindsight 2020, I probably should have put a little through hole right here so you'd be able to access these screws pretty easily. It's no big deal. Probably gonna add another little bit of maybe spacer right here, just to kind of get a little bit more space between this and the flight controller. And there's my battery. Alright, so yeah, here it is. It's all put together, buttoned up, really nice. Still got to, just going to take some zip ties and zip tie this back here to these little braces for the motors. But that's pretty much it. And I designed this in such a way that, like I said, where this is like a friction fit, but you can just flip open the side of your canopy, access your video, do your programming and everything. So now all that's left for me is to make sure my firmware is up to date on my video transmitter, get everything set up in beta flight. I'm gonna test fly this too.